Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Nights. This is Kevin. Tonight, we have a collection of stories from the hills of Scotland. In bygone days, there lived a little princess named Gold Tree, and she was one of the prettiest children in the whole world. Although her mother was dead, she had a very happy life, for her father loved her dearly and thought that nothing was too much trouble so long as it gave his little daughter pleasure. But by and by, he married again, and then the little princess's sorrows began. For you see, his new wife, whose name, curious to say, was Silver Tree. She was very beautiful, but she was also very jealous, and she made herself quite miserable for fear that someday she should meet someone who was better looking than she was herself. And when she found that her stepdaughter was so very pretty, she took quite a dislike to her at once, and was always looking at her and wondering if people would think her prettier than she was. And because, in her heart of hearts, she was afraid that they would do so, she was very unkind indeed to the poor girl. At last, one day, when Princess Goldtree was quite grown up, the two ladies went for a walk to a little well which lay all surrounded by trees in the middle of a deep glen. Now, the water in this well was so clear that everyone who looked into it saw his face reflected on the surface, and the proud queen loved to come and peep into its depths, so, of course, that she could see her own picture mirrored in the water. But today, as she was looking in, what should she see but a little trout, which was swimming quietly backwards and forwards, not very far from the surface. "Troutie, Troutie, answer me this one question," said the queen. "Am I not the most beautiful woman in the world?" "No, indeed you are not," replied the trout, promptly jumping out of the water as he spoke in order to swallow a fly. "Well then, who is the most beautiful woman then?" asked the disappointed queen, for she had expected a far different answer. "Thy stepdaughter, the Princess Goldtree, without a doubt," said the little fish. Then, frightened by the black look that came upon the jealous queen's face, he dived to the bottom of the well. And it was no wonder that he did so, for the queen's expression was not pleasant to look at, as she darted an angry glance at her fair young stepdaughter, who was busy picking flowers just a little distance away. Indeed, She was so annoyed at the thought that anyone should say that the girl was prettier than she was, that she quite lost her self-control. And when she reached home, she went up in a violent passion to her room and threw herself on the bed, declaring that she felt very ill indeed. It was in vain that Princess Goldtree asked her what the matter was, and if she could do anything for her. She would not let the poor girl touch her, but pushed her away as if she had been some evil thing. So, at last the princess had to leave her alone and go out of the apartment, feeling very sad indeed. By and by, the king came home from his hunting, and he at once asked for the queen. He was told that she had been seized with a sudden illness, and that she was lying on her bed in her own room, and that no one, not even the court physician, who had been hastily summoned, could make out what was wrong with her. In great anxiety, for he really loved her, the king went up to her bedside and asked the queen how she felt, and if there was anything at all that he could do to relieve her. "Yes, there is one thing that you could do," she answered harshly. "But I know full well that even although it is the only thing that will cure me, you will not do it." "No," said the king. "I deserve better words at your mouth than these, for you know well that I would give you anything you care to ask, even if it be half of my kingdom." "Then, give me your daughter's heart to eat," cried the queen. "For unless I can obtain that, I will die, and that speedily." She spoke so wildly and looked at him in such a strange fashion that the poor king really thought that her brain was turned, and he was at his wits' end. He left the room, and he paced up and he paced down the corridor in great distress, until at last he remembered that that very morning the son of a great king had arrived from a country far over the sea, asking for his daughter's hand in marriage. "Here is a way out of this difficulty," he said to himself. "This marriage pleases me well, and I will have it celebrated at once. Then, when my daughter is safe out of the country, I will send a lad up to the hillside, and he shall kill a goat, and I will have its heart prepared and dressed, and send it up to my wife. Perhaps the sight of it will cure her of this madness." So, he had this strange prince summoned before him, and told him how the queen had taken a sudden illness that had wrought on her brain, and had caused her to take a dislike to the princess, and how it seemed as if it would be a good thing if, with the maiden's consent, the marriage could take place at once, so that the queen might be left alone to recover from her strange disease. Now, the prince was delighted to gain his bride so easily, and the princess was glad to escape from her stepmother's hatred, so the marriage took place at once, and the newly wedded pair set off across the sea for the prince's country. Then the king sent a lad up to the hillside to kill a goat, and when it was killed, he gave orders that its heart should be dressed and cooked and sent to the queen's apartment on a silver dish. And the wicked woman tasted it, believing it to be the heart of her stepdaughter. When she had done so, she rose from her bed and went about the castle looking as well and hearty as ever. I'm glad to be able to tell you that the marriage of Princess Goldtree, which had come about in such a hurry, turned out to be a great success. For the prince whom she had wedded was rich and great and powerful, and he loved her dearly, and she was as happy as the day was long. So things went peacefully on for about a year. Queen Silvertree was satisfied and contented because she thought her stepdaughter was dead, while all the time the princess was happy and prosperous in her new home. But at the end of the year, it chanced that the queen went once more to the well in the little glen, in order to see her face reflected in the water. And it chanced also that the same little trout was swimming backwards and forwards, just as he had done the year before. And the foolish queen was determined to have a better answer to a question this time than she had last. "Trouty, Trouty," she whispered, leaning over the edge of the well, "am I not the most beautiful woman in the world?" "By my troth, you are not," answered the trout in his very straightforward way. "Who is the most beautiful woman then?" asked the queen, her face growing pale at the thought that she had yet another rival. "Why, your Majesty's stepdaughter, the Princess Goldtree, to be sure," answered the trout. The queen threw back her head with a sigh of relief. "Well, at any rate, people cannot admire her now," she said, "for it is a year since she died. I ate her heart for my supper." "Can you be sure of that, your Majesty?" asked the trout, with a little twinkle in his eye. "Methinks it is but a year since she married the gallant young prince who came from abroad to seek her hand, and returned with him to his own country. When the queen heard these words, she turned quite cold with rage, for she knew that her husband had deceived her. And she rose from her knees and went straight home to the palace, and hiding her anger as best she could, she asked him if he would give orders to have the longship made ready, as she wished to go and visit her dear stepdaughter, for it was such a very long time since she had seen her. The king was somewhat surprised at her request, but he was only too glad to think that she had got over her hatred towards his daughter, and he gave orders that the longship should be made ready at once. And soon it was speeding over the water, its prow turned in the direction of the land where the princess lived, steered by the queen herself, for she knew the course that the boat ought to take, and she was in such a haste to be at her journey's end that she would allow no one else to take the helm. Now it chanced that Princess Goldtree was alone that very day, for her husband had gone hunting, and as she looked out of one of the castle windows, she saw a boat sailing over the sea towards the landing place. She recognized it as her father's longship, and she guessed only too well whom it carried on board. She was almost beside herself with terror at the thought, for she knew that it was for no good purpose that Queen Silvertree had taken the trouble to set out to visit her, and she felt that she would have given almost anything she possessed if her husband had been at home. In her distress, she hurried into the servants' hall. "Oh, what shall I do? What shall I do?" she cried. "For I see my father's longship coming over the sea, and I know that my stepmother is on board. And if she has a chance, she will kill me, for she hates me more than anything else upon earth." Now the servants worshipped the ground that the young mistress trod on, for she was always kind and considerate to them. And when they saw how frightened she was and heard her piteous words, they crowded round her as if to shield her from any harm that threatened her. "Do not be afraid, Your Highness," they cried. "We will defend thee with our very lives if need be. But in case the lady stepmother should have the power to throw any evil spell over you, we will lock you in the great mullioned chamber. Then she cannot get you at all." Now the mullioned chamber was a strong room, which was in a part of the castle all by itself, and its door was so thick that no one could possibly break through it. And the princess knew that if she were once inside the room, with its stout oaken door between her and her stepmother, she would be perfectly safe from any mischief that the wicked woman could devise. So, she consented to her faithful servants and allowed them to lock her in the mullioned chamber. So, it came to pass, when Queen Silvertree arrived at the great door of the castle, and commanded the lackey who opened it to take her to the royal mistress, he told her with a low bow that was impossible, because the princess was locked in the strong room of the castle and could not get out, because no one knew where the key was, which was quite true. For you see, the old butler had tied it round the neck of the prince's favourite sheepdog and had sent him away to the hills to seek his master. "Take me to the door of the apartment," commanded the queen. "At least I can speak to my dear daughter through it." And the lackey, who did not see what harm could possibly come from this, did as he was bid. "If the key is really lost, and you cannot come out to welcome me, dear Gold Tree," said the deceitful queen, at least put your little finger through the keyhole, that I may kiss it." The princess did so, never dreaming that evil could come to her through such a simple action. But it did, for instead of kissing the tiny finger, her stepmother stabbed it with a poisoned needle. And so deadly was the poison that before she could utter a single cry, the poor princess fell as one dead on the floor. When she heard the fall, a smile of satisfaction crept over the Queen Silvertree's face. "Now, I can say that I am the most beautiful woman in the world." And she went back to the lackey, who stood waiting at the end of the passage, and told him that she had said all that she wanted to say to her daughter, and that now she must return home. So the man attended to her and sent her to the boat with all due ceremony, and she set sail again for her own country. And no one in the castle knew that any harm had befallen the dear mistress, until the prince came home from his hunting with the key of the chamber. He laughed when he heard the story of Queen Silvertree's visit, and he told the servants that they had done very well. Then he ran upstairs to open the door and release his wife. But what was his horror and dismay when he did so, to find her lying dead at his feet on the floor. He was nearly beside himself with rage and grief, and because he knew that a deadly poison such as Queen Silvertree had used would preserve the princess's body so that it had no need of burial, he had it laid on a silken couch and left in the chamber, so that he could go and look at her whenever he pleased. He was so terribly lonely. However, in a little time he married again, and his second wife was just as sweet and as good as the first one had been. This new wife was very happy. There was only one little thing that caused her any trouble at all, and she was too sensible to let it make her miserable. That one thing was that there was one room in the castle, a room which stood at the end of a passage by itself, which she could never enter, as her husband always carried the key, and as when she asked him the reason of this, he always made an excuse of some kind. She made up her mind that she would not seem as if she did not trust him, so she asked no more questions about the matter. But one day, the prince chanced to leave the door unlocked, and as he had never told her not to do so, she went in, and there she saw Princess Goldtree lying on the silken couch, looking as if she were asleep. "Is she dead, or is she only sleeping?" she said to herself. And she went up to the couch and looked closely at the princess. And there, sticking in her little finger, she discovered a curiously shaped needle. "There has been evil work here," she thought to herself. "If that needle be not poisoned, then I know nothing of medicine." And being skilled in leechcraft, she drew it out very carefully. And then, in a moment, Princess Goldtree opened her eyes and sat up, and presently she had recovered sufficiently to tell the other princess the whole story. Now, if her stepmother had been jealous, the other princess was not jealous at all, for when she heard all that had happened, she clapped her little hands, crying, "Oh, how glad the prince will be, for although he has married again, I know that he loves you best." That night, the prince came home from hunting, looking very tired and sad indeed, for what his second wife had said was quite true. Although he loved her very much, he was always mourning in his heart for his first dear love, Princess Goldtree. "How sad you are," exclaimed his wife, going out to meet him. "Is there nothing that I can do to bring a smile to your face?" "Nothing," answered the prince wearily. laying down his bow, for he was too heartsore even to pretend to be happy. "Except to give you back Gold Tree," said his wife mischievously, "and that I can do. You will find her alive and well in the chamber." And without a word, the prince ran upstairs, and sure enough, there was his dear Gold Tree, sitting on the couch, ready to welcome him. He was so overjoyed to see her that he threw his arms round her neck and kissed her over and over again, quite forgetting his poor second wife, who had followed him upstairs, and who now stood watching the meeting that she had brought about. She did not seem to be sorry for herself, however. "I always knew that your heart yearned after Princess Goldtree," she said, "and it is but right that it should be so. For she was your first love, and since she has come to life again, I will go back to my own people." "No, indeed you will not," answered the prince, "for it is you who has brought me this joy. You will stay with us, and we shall all three live happily together. And Goldtree and you will become great friends." And so it came to pass, for Princess Goldtree and the other princess soon became like sisters, and loved each other as if they had been brought up together all their lives. In this manner, another year passed away, and one evening in the old country, Queen Silvertree went, as she had done before, to look at her face in the water of the little well in the glen. And, as had happened twice before, the trout was there. "Troutie, Troutie," she whispered, "am I not the most beautiful woman in the world?" "By my troth, you are not," answered the trout, as he had answered on the two previous occasions. "And who do you say is the most beautiful woman now?" asked the queen, her voice trembling with rage and vexation. "I have given her a name to you these 2 years back," answered the trout. "The Princess Goldtree, of course." "But she is dead," laughed the queen. "I am sure of it this time, for it is just a year since I stabbed her little finger with a poisoned needle, and I heard her fall down dead on the floor." "I would not be so sure of that," answered the trout, and without saying another word, he dived straight down to the bottom of the well. After hearing his mysterious words, the queen could not rest, and at last she asked her husband to have the longship prepared once more, so that she could go and see her stepdaughter. The king gave the order gladly, and it all happened as it had happened once before. She steered the ship over the sea with her own hands, and when it was approaching the land, it was seen and recognized by Princess Goldtree. The prince was out hunting, of course, and the princess ran in great terror to her friend, the other princess, who was upstairs in her chamber. "Oh, what shall I do? What shall I do?" she cried. "For I see my father's longship coming, and I know that my cruel stepmother is on board, and she will try to kill me, as she tried to kill me before. Oh, come, let us escape to the hills." "Not at all," replied the other princess, throwing her arms around the trembling Goldtree. "I am not afraid of this lady stepmother. Come with me, and we will go down to the seashore to greet her." So they both went down to the edge of the water, and when Queen Silvertree saw her stepdaughter coming, she pretended to be very glad, and sprang out of the boat and ran to meet her, and held out a silver goblet full of wine for her to drink. "This is a rare wine from the east," she said, "and therefore very precious. I brought a flagon with me so that we might pledge each other in a loving cup." Princess Goldtree, who was ever gentle and courteous, would have stretched out her hand for the cup, had not the other princess stepped between her and her stepmother. "No, madam," she said gravely, looking the queen straight in the face. "It is the custom in this land for the one who offers a loving cup to drink from it first herself." "I will follow the custom gladly," answered the queen, and she raised the goblet to her mouth. But the other princess, who was watching her very closely, noticed that she did not allow the wine that it contained to touch her lips. So she stepped forward and, as if by accident, struck the bottom of the goblet with her shoulder. Part of its contents flew into the queen's face, and part, before she could shut her mouth, went down her throat. So, because of her wickedness, she was, as the good book says, caught in her own net. For she had made the wine so poisonous that almost before she had swallowed it, she fell dead at the two princesses' feet. No one was sorry for her, for she really deserved her fate, and they buried her hastily in a lonely piece of ground. Very soon, everybody had forgotten all about her. As for Princess Goldtree, she lived happily and peacefully with her husband and her friend for the remainder of her life. On the windswept Isle of Sandy, nestled within the Orkney archipelago, there once dwelled a man whose name was whispered like a secret among the islanders. Johnny Croy. His existence was intertwined with the rugged landscape of Volyar, a place where he resided with his mother in a quaint, thatched-roof farmhouse, standing stoically against the relentless Orkney winds. Unmarried, Johnny was a figure of local lore, a man whose future seemed to be on the cusp of change. Johnny himself was a vision of rugged handsomeness, his stature tall and commanding, much like the ancient standing stones dotted around the island. His eyes, a mesmerizing shade of blue, mirrored the vast Orkney skies and were as deep as the ocean that embraced his homeland. His laugh was effortless and infectious, and it resonated through the hearts of the island's women, each of whom harboured a secret blush at the mere sight of him. On a day marked by the summer solstice, when the sun hung lazily in the sky, Johnny set off from his farm, his heart set on a quest for driftwood along the island's pristine beaches. In Orkney, where trees bowed to the rarity, driftwood was a treasure, sought after like lost gold. And as Johnny meandered along the shore, his boots leaving fleeting imprints on the white sands, the day unfolded in perfect harmony. The sky above was a brilliant blue, reflecting the sea's crystalline hues, creating a world where the horizon blurred, indistinguishable from the vast expanse above. It was as if Johnny himself, with his sapphire eyes, had been born from this blend of sea and sky. Yet, his search for driftwood seemed unfruitful, so he wandered further, reaching a craggy headland where the sea's whispered turned into chants. There, beyond the dunes, a melody drifted, ensnaring his senses. And this, of course, was no ordinary song. It was an orchestral symphony of emotion, ebbing and flowing with the grace of starlings in the twilight sky. It stirred in Johnny a whirlwind of feelings, a desire to succumb to slumber, to dance in abandon, to laugh with joy, and to weep in sorrow, all woven into one. Compelled by this, he ascended the dunes, his heart beating in tandem with the song's rhythm. Beyond lay another stretch of beach, where the scene before him seemed to leap out from the pages of ancient folklore. A woman sat perched upon a jagged rock, her back to the sea, her long golden hair cascading down like a shimmering waterfall of sunlight. Around her waist was something extraordinary, a fishtail, glistening worn with an elegance that defied nature. She was, unmistakably, a mermaid. Now the mermaids of Orkney lore were unique, blessed with human legs concealed beneath their majestic tails, upon which they could don or shed at will. Johnny, entranced, approached, his footsteps hesitant, yet drawn by the sheer magnetism of her presence. And as he stood before her, the mermaid's song ceased. Her eyes, reflecting the depths of the sea, opened and locked onto Johnny's. A moment of startled silence hung between them, before he, driven by a force he couldn't comprehend, bent forward and kissed her. The kiss broke like a wave upon the shore, swift, unexpected, leaving them both reeling. And in the mermaid's eyes danced a mix of surprise and something unfathomable. Regaining her composure, she smiled, a gesture that seemed to hold the mysteries of the deep, and with agility that belied her serene appearance, she brandished her tail with the swiftness of a striking viper, striking poor Johnny's cheek, sending him tumbling to the sandy ground. By the time he regained his footing, she was already a part of the sea, her form slicing through the waves with elegant ease. Johnny, heart pounding, raced up to the water's edge. No trace of her remained, save for a single, solitary object lying in the sand. Her comb, crafted from polished bone, it was adorned with intricate swirling patterns that seemed to tell the story of the sea's eternal dance. He clutched it, his gaze stretching over the endless ocean. But there, bobbing in the waves, was the mermaid. Her voice carried over the water, a blend of command and plea. Return my comb. Johnny's reply was born of a dream, a sudden fantasy spun in the moment. I will return it if you marry me. Her laughter was like the chime of distant bells. Just return it, please. But Johnny persisted, driven by a love as deep as the sea. No, marry me, and I shall give you my heart. I cannot, she lamented, for I belong to the sea. Please, return my comb. Johnny's heart wrestled with hope and despair. But you have legs, you can live on land. I would care for you. cherish you. His words trailed off as distant voices carried by the wind reached his ears. Turning briefly, he looked back to the sea, only to find the mermaid gone, vanished into the vast embrace of her watery realm. Johnny's journey back to the farmhouse was less a walk and more a drift, his feet barely touching the earth as he tread upon the very mist that curled around the Orkney cliffs now. And upon entering the hearth-warmed kitchen, he found himself seated at the sturdy wooden table, his mother placing a bowl of hearty stew before him. Yet, the fragrant steam curling up from the bowl went unnoticed, lost against the backdrop of his daydreams. Across from him, his mother settled into her chair, her keen eyes observing the ethereal glow that seemed to have enveloped her son. The corners of her mouth twitched upwards, recognizing the symptoms of a heart newly ensnared. "You've met a lass, haven't you, Johnny?" she inquired, her voice carrying a melody of maternal intuition. "Aye," Johnny replied, his voice a distant murmur, as if drawn from the depths of a dream. His mother exhaled a soft sigh, her heart twined with a protective love, harbouring a belief that no earthly woman could possibly match the worth she saw in her son. "All right then," she pressed on, curiosity painting her words. "Who is she? Is it that Mary?" "No," came Johnny's simple, faraway reply. "Is it the Muir girl?" she probed further, only to receive another distant "no." "The Flett girl?" Again, mother, "no." A frown creased upon her brow, concern weaving through her thoughts. "She's not from Shappensay, is she?" "No, mum, she's not from Shappensay. She's a mermaid." The room fell into a silence, so profound that it seemed to absorb all the sound, save for the soft crackling fire. "A mermaid, Johnny?" his mother's voice finally uttered, a blend of disbelief and concern. "Aye, a mermaid." Another sigh escaped her, deeper this time, as she snapped her fingers sharply before his eyes, a gesture meant to anchor him back to reality. "Now just you listen to me, Johnny Croy." She spoke with a firmness that commanded attention. "And you listen well. You're a Christian boy, and this is a Christian household, and we'll have no dealings with mermaids here. Finfolk, mermaids, trowies, selkies, they're all the devil's creatures. Do you understand me, boy?" Johnny's gaze, once fixed on the distant horizon of his thoughts, dropped to his untouched stew. "Yes, mother, I understand," he murmured, a note of resignation in his voice. But as the night enveloped the farmhouse, and Johnny retired to his room, the mermaid's presence filled his thoughts, as pervasive and gentle as the sea breeze. He woke with her image etched upon his mind, and in every stolen moment of solitude, he found solace in her comb. His fingers traced its intricate swirling patterns, each curve and line a tangible connection to the mysterious, enchanting creature that had unknowingly captured his very soul. As the relentless march of time wove on, the initial blaze of joy that had ignited within Johnny's heart began to flicker and fade. He had been certain as the steadfast Orkney tides, that he had found his destined love in the golden-haired mermaid. Visions of their reunion danced before his eyes, a promise of eternal togetherness. And each day, he would scour the beaches with a vigilance born of unwavering hope, certain that she would emerge from the embrace of the sea to join him. It was only a matter of time, or so he believed. Yet, time, in its silent procession, brought not the mermaid, but a cavalcade of other sea creatures. Seals with glossy eyes, ducks bobbing along the waves, and porpoises arcing gracefully through the water. But of the mermaid, with her cascading golden hair and mesmerizing song, there was no sign. And Johnny's joy, once a radiant flame, began to dim, overshadowed by the creeping tendrils of despair that wound their way into his very soul. Compelled by a desperation that refused to be silenced, Johnny, after another night of restless yearning, rose from his bed in the eerie half-light that precedes the dawn. And with determination etched in every step, he traversed the rugged landscape of Sandy, his destination known only to his tormented heart. He sought the wisdom of the Spey wife. The Spey wife was an enigmatic figure cloaked in the ancient knowledge of the Orkney Isles, and she was known among the islanders as a conduit to the old gods. Her reputation was of fear and reverence, and though many publicly shunned her, in secret they came to seek her counsel. Unfazed by the early hour, the Spey wife welcomed Johnny into her humble abode. The warmth of her hearth, a stark contrast to the chill of the pre-dawn air. And with a knowing smile, she invited him to share his burden. "It's a girl," Johnny confessed, his voice a mere whisper against the crackling fire. And now the Spey wife listened intently, her single eye piercing through the shadows, absorbing every word of Johnny's tale. And when he finished, her voice, seasoned with the wisdom of ages, carried a truth that Johnny wished not to hear. "You need to forget this woman," she began, her words gentle yet firm. "The lure of the mermaid is an old tale here, woven into the very fabric of these isles. And let me tell you, Johnny, these tales never end well." Yet, in her eyes, Johnny saw a glimmer of understanding, a recognition of the relentless pull of the heart. "However," she conceded, "the path of the heart is not easily swayed by words. You mentioned that you have this mermaid's comb." I do," Johnny replied, his heart quickening. "Then you must keep it," the Spey wife advised, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "A mermaid's bond to her comb is unbreakable. You must hold it close, Johnny, and in time she will have to seek you out." Overwhelmed with a renewed surge of hope, Johnny's gratitude knew no bounds, and so he offered the Spey wife a bag of fresh mussels, a humble token of his immense gratitude. And with his heart lighter than it had been in days, he hurried home, his face split by a grin so wide it seemed to chase the shadows of despair into the forgotten corners of the night. And then, just a few nights later, Johnny awoke in the middle of the night from a dream of the mermaid's song. Lying awake, he could still hear her song. Johnny opened his eyes. He sat up straight, sitting on the end of his bed, illuminated by moonlight streaming in through the window, was the mermaid. She ceased singing. "I knew you'd come for me," said Johnny. "I came for my comb," she said. "Marry me," said Johnny. "No, I told you, Johnny Croy. I belong in the sea. I can't marry you." Johnny turned to her. "But I know you can take off your fish tail and live with me on land. You could live on the farm with me. I'll inherit the farm one day, and we'll have children of our own. We'll take them for walks on the beach and play with them by the fire in the evening. I love you, and I promise you, we'll have a good life together. I guess we could do that, said the mermaid. Or we could live beneath the sea. We could live in a city of coral and crystal, far below the waves. Every day we could ride seals on the hunt, and every night we could dance amid a shimmering, shifting web of whale songs. No, said Johnny. No, I can't leave the farm. There's always been a Croy on this farm, and I couldn't be the last. Not for anything. The mermaid thought for a little while. Well, how about this then, she said. I will marry you. You shouldn't have kept my comb from me, but I can see you are a good man. I see it in those bonny blue eyes of yours. I'll marry you and live with you on the land for 7 years. And after that, you, me, and any children we might have will live under the sea for 7 years. And if you still want to return to the land after 7 years beneath the sea, we'll do so for the rest of our lives. What do you say? I say yes, said Johnny, and they kissed in the moonlight, and he gave her back her comb. The news went out. Johnny Croy was to marry. It raced around the island and was all anyone could talk about, yet no one knew who'd won Johnny's heart. Is it that Mary? They asked. It's not Katie Muir. Maybe it's Lizzie Flett. She's not from Shapinsea, is she? The day of the wedding came, and the islanders packed themselves into the church, waiting to get a glimpse of the girl who'd netted Johnny Croy. Johnny waited at the altar. The fiddlers took up the wedding music, and in through the doors walked Johnny's bride. The congregation turned and gasped, and it almost hurt their eyes to look at her. So beautiful was she in her white dress and pearls, with a rainbow of flowers adorning her golden hair. She slowly walked up the aisle and joined Johnny at the altar. The two smiled at one another as the minister opened his Bible and began to read. Now something curious happened then. Johnny's bride began to fidget. She chewed her lips so hard that they began to bleed. People noticed her pinching her arms and bringing her shoulder to her ear as if to block out the minister's voice. The truth was that she couldn't stand the words of the Bible, which are poisonous to creatures of magic. However, she got through it. Johnny put his lips to hers, and they were married. There was a wedding party back at the farm, which Johnny's mother excused herself from, claiming she was feeling unwell. The happy couple and their guests danced and drank and had an all wonderful time. In the days and weeks after the wedding, it seemed as if half of Orkney found their way to Johnny's door. They each claimed to be passing by, or that they needed to borrow a hammer or a spade. But really, they just wanted to learn more about Johnny's bride. And everyone who visited her found her an absolute delight. Johnny's bride sang heart-rending songs. She knew a sackful of riddles and brewed the best ale in Orkney. And she was always willing to share her wonderful stories and songs, to offer another cog of ale, or to lend a hand when it was needed. Though many a girl was jealous of her, and though many a man was jealous of Johnny, no one could find a bad word to say about her. And in time, she grew pregnant. Everyone celebrated the news, but for one person, Johnny's mother. You see, her boy had never gone against her wishes until he met the sea creature. The fish-tailed witch had put a spell on Johnny. She was sure of it. Yet there was no telling Johnny. He never listened to anything she said anymore. Seeing the sea witch take over her house was more than Johnny's mother could bear. She gave up working. All day, she sat in her chair in the corner, making every scathing remark she could think of. Johnny and his wife sickened of her, and eventually they just ignored her. And when her first grandson was born, she called him Devil Spawn and even refused to touch him. And then 7 years passed like this. Johnny and the mermaid were happily married, with 7 healthy children to their name. And the time came for them to leave Sandy. They made their plans in secret. Of course, Johnny was afraid to tell his mother, and he put it off until the very last moment, against his wife's wishes. But his mother eavesdropped and learned everything about what was happening. Now one Sunday, she stayed on after church to talk with the minister, and she told him the whole story. "The devil is in your house, sure enough, Mrs. Croy," he said. "I only wish you had told me sooner. Can anything be done?" "Oh yes," said the minister. "There is something that can be done. The day of the move came. A boat rose out of the sea near their home. It was manned by Finman, who rowed it into shore. They came to the house, and Johnny and the Finman packed up everything they would be taking and brought it all down to the boat, while Johnny's wife kept the children from running beneath their feet. "We're going on an adventure," she told the children, who cheered and danced when they heard this. Soon, they were ready to leave. Johnny had arranged with his friends that they would take over the farm and look after his mother. He told them he would be staying with his wife's family for a wee while. "I'll go and get the baby," said Johnny's wife, and they had gathered at the shore with the Finman. All the children, save the youngest, were in the boat. She walked to the house. Inside, she took a last look around before entering the little back room where the baby slept in his cot. It was dark and quiet in the room. The baby was sleeping. Johnny's wife leaned over the cot and reached down. She carefully took hold of her baby and screamed. Her hands leapt back as if burnt. Pain shot up her arms, and she looked in disbelief as the skin on her hands cracked and peeled. Again, she tried to pick up her child. Again, she screamed as the same thing happened. And suddenly, a terrible suspicion dawned on her. So she reached down again. And this time, she didn't touch her baby's skin. Instead, she pulled back the covers and carefully lifted the little jumper he wore. "No," she said. "No." And there, gouged into his back, was a bloody cross. Laughter sounded behind her, and sitting among the shadows in the corner of the room was Johnny's mother. "You thought you'd won, didn't you, devil woman?" she said. "You may have stolen my boy from me. You might take the rest of my grandchildren from me, but not this one. This lad will grow up to be a Christian, and he'll farm this land until he dies, just as his father should have done, and his children should have done too." There was nothing Johnny's wife could say or do, and so she left the room, and she left her baby. "Where is—" began Johnny when she arrived at the boat. "Let's just go," she said, shaking her head, not looking at anyone. "Let's just go." Johnny saw the look in her eyes. He nodded to the Finman. They rowed the boat out to sea, and it disappeared beneath the waves. Johnny and his family never returned to Sandy. Nothing more is known of them, so they must have chosen to live out their lives on the seabed. As for their baby, the boy grew up and took over the farm. His name was Corsa Croy, meaning Croy of the Cross. And despite his grandmother's wishes, he became not a farmer, but a warrior, fighting in far-off lands with strange-sounding names. Corsa eventually married and settled in Caithness, and the farm at Voljar was never again farmed by a Croy.